The family values, I feel like it's people don't take it for granted on how important it is. Not just on business, on personal, obviously, because of your happiness and you're forming your legacy, but in business, I just feel like it's one of the most important things too.
Yeah. Are we recording already?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I just hung up on a rant. My bad. Yeah.
It's all good. 3 balls, 2 strikes, pressure is on. This is where we discuss real estate, property improvement, and business. Together, we'll strategize on how to win. Welcome to Full Count.
I think almost in any business, perhaps more so in small business than maybe corporate, I think that to some degree, there's always a level of personal family tradition and you offering that to the public, maybe.
Right.
You'll take the Hermes family, I forget their actual last name now, but when that whole thing started out, it's passed on through so many generations now, but at the very center and at the depth of a brand like that, that comes from personal family tradition.
He kept it small to some degree.
Exactly.
Did you see how he promoted all his family members across the line?
Exactly.
And they all have different positions.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And so I think, perhaps on a smaller scale, or I think where there's brands that are much more personal, I think that's just coming from the brand of the family, which we were talking about just a little bit ago.
I think a lot of that also comes to add on to what you're saying is primarily it works out through a smaller company because you tend to see all your employees and your bosses as more of a personal relationship rather than when it's such a large corporation, you don't see everyone.
Right.
But like the Hermes company, large corporation, but somehow I'm sure his family values, obviously, as he promoted everyone in his family, his family values he brought into the company.
Right.
But if you don't have family values, I feel like, especially if you're a leader, you're kind of a lot more colder with the people you work with.
Yeah.
I feel that within my family too. What I got taught from my father, what he got taught from his father. But I feel like, fortunately for my father, he improved it. And now it's my turn to improve it. And that's where the building goes into. And that's why towards the end, I want to talk about those tweets that you were talking about, the generational.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that the responsibility of of improving.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like the marathon when you're running, right?
Of course.
I don't know the name of it, but like you have the baton and you're passing the baton, the other person goes in front of you.
Yeah. I think it's important that if you're building a family business, and maybe just, we've had our business for 20 years, but, just to keep the family on pace to continually improve, improve the quality of life for not only themselves, but for future generations. It's important to go back to the stories of our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents. Those tweets talk about that a lot, and I vividly remember, giving a speech at the eulogy at my grandfather's funeral.
Yeah.
My mom's like, you got to do this. I'm like,
you got to step in.
She's like, I had a dream and you got to do it. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. Right. And I sat down,
moment.
And we're a large family. My grandfather had 10 kids, but for the first time, I sat down and I thought about his journey that I knew of. Obviously, I didn't know anything, or I didn't know a lot, or I didn't know the details, but I knew that, he left, a small town in Sinaloa, migrated to Tijuana, met my grandmother, but the journey from Sinaloa to Tijuana to San Diego, and then
that's a journey,
him passing that baton to my mother, and then my mother, becoming a business owner, an entrepreneur,
right?
There, whether she knew it or not, there was a responsibility that was given to her to, to make this better for herself, at least. Right. Because imagine the sacrifice of leaving your small town, everything you've ever known, to come here. So reflecting on that speech that I gave, that eulogy, was eye-opening to me, because I thought, like, well, my grandfather took it to this place, then my mother took it a little bit further. Now I have to take it even further. Then all of this was taken in vain, You know what I'm saying? Like this,
you feel responsible
100%,
or you're going to be guilty of just smearing his hard work.
And now I have a son.
There you go.
And now it's his turn, you know, to take it even further, whatever that may be.
And I think just to tie back to a conversation I had with a council member the other day on another podcast, we were talking, we have different political beliefs, but a lot of what he says is on point too. But we were discussing equality and equity. There's a difference there, right? Equity being everyone turns out the same result. Equality, everyone has an opportunity. And I was explaining because on his side, maybe it tends to be more equity. But the problem is we don't all start at the same pace of other people because a lot of time because of family. Some families have higher wealth. Some people are born poor. So it's the family's responsibility, like you were saying with your grandfather, to, if you're poor, I mean, it's unfortunate, but you know, I was born to a lower middle class or middle class. And now it's your turn to get your family to rise up. Because when you're born into a family and they're poor, you're poor, and then they're wealthy, you can't just become wealthy. That's not equity. Does not work. The reality is that who's gonna get that buffer to bring you all the way up? No one but yourself and your family, and that's why it's so important.
Well, and I think we've heard so many stories that when those that are not educated or groomed, you know, and are just given everything, you know, lose it. How many stories of people winning the lottery have you heard that they've gone broke within 5 years because they don't have that experience nor that education of how to handle this, how to handle, you know, this money, you know, this wealth that suddenly was bestowed upon them, you know? And I think that happens a lot, even in wealthy families where the children are given everything and they're not given that chance to work. You know, you look at a lot of the families that have had generational success, you know, these kids, you know, went to the elite schools, but
the Vanderbilts,
you know, and they were also given the internships, you know, at these very important companies, you know, it's who you know, right? But they were given, you know, those opportunities, and eventually, you know,
after 3 generations, I think I don't remember the precise statistic, but it's about 80% of wealthy families on the 3rd generation destroy it. Something like that. So that's why those laying that foundation work and those meetings is crucial. But before going into that, I just wanted to say, like, on the personal side, if you have a family, you tend to be a lot happier. For the most part. Some people expect people to like be single. The more single you are, the less family you have, the better, because it's all me. You're growing in your career, which I agree to some point. I fell into that a little bit when I was younger. I was like, I want to be single till I'm 40. You know, I'm going to be dating and growing in my career. And you know what movie kind of set me straight a little bit, besides my parents, obviously they're the ones that did 90% of that job, maybe 95. The other 5% was it was a movie with Nicolas Cage, Family Man.
Oh yeah. Great movie.
He's on Wall Street. He's killing it, and you know, he has the most gorgeous women, girls that he dates, and then he reflects back to a time when he was dating another lady that was his perfect match, and he left her to be selfish to some degree, and he was killing it, and then all of a sudden, his happiness vanishes because he's like, I'm all alone in this apartment, in this penthouse in Manhattan. And I was like, oh, that gives me a little bit of perspective.
100%.
And then he has no kids, not saying that you have to have kids, but he has no kids or nephews to build that legacy. Like, you're going to be the next Wall Street guy. You know what I mean?
I think that I had that moment.
Really?
You know, maybe like 2 years ago.
Oh,
you know, where there was finally consistency and flow to my career. You know, I've been doing this for so long, but there was a moment where it felt much more secure, right? Being in real estate, being in commissions, nothing is ever secure, right? But like, I just found my rhythm. I felt like I was an expert, you know, in what I was doing. And, you know, I moved into a beautiful apartment, and fortunately I've had my son with me as well. But, you know, suddenly there was like this yearning for more family, right? And also, you know, the thought of legacy. You know, I have my son, and this is all going to him, but you know, I want him to have a support system as well. I don't want him just to be alone, and
Right.
and you'll read that, in a lot of these, family businesses, it's the siblings, it's
Take over.
it's the cousins, it just expands, and it's a beautiful thing. And, there's infighting in every family,
Right.
but yeah, I had that moment. I had that family man moment for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I'm glad to hear that, 'cause
Yeah.
yeah, we're very similar in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that really changed me, dude.
Yeah.
And my dad also watched it with me. He's like, you see,
Yeah.
that's what I'm telling
You
you.
realize it's just not about money. It's
Yeah.
not just success is meaningless if there's nobody to share it with. And it's so cheesy and cliche because you've heard it in that movie and every
Right.
other
It is
movie.
a little cliche,
But it's
true.
It's so true.
Yeah, because I almost got caught up in LA with that scene.
Yeah.
When my dad and my mother's values felt like it kept getting reinforced. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And sometimes I was like, shush. I almost wish I could say shush a little longer, but
yeah, I think that the culture of LA, perhaps even California, because I hear that a lot about San Diego as well. So maybe the culture of being in California, in the United States, this hustle mentality, this, always wanting more, wanting bigger, wanting faster. It's never enough. I think that it very much exists. Yet I think that people like you and I, that perhaps are first, second generation here and are
Right.
tied much closer to traditions, from wherever it is that our families came from,
For sure.
Sort of pull us back, or at least, the elders in our family remind us, just like your father did, of like what's really important. Right. And
100%.
we should be so grateful for that.
100%. And now it's our responsibility to remind the next one.
Right.
And then lay out that foundation for that child, like your son, to lay it out for his and then his and his and his 100%. Repeating process. We can grow, dude. So we can like start here and then be a tycoon eventually. Like I sometimes think like, I wonder what the makeup of the person will be, personality, how he'll look or she will look. That'd be a tycoon taking over, and I'll probably be long dead. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. It's there's got to be a long-term vision, and those that person, whoever that is, that I follow their tweets and their blog, talks about how we who are, they call them the founders of these families and the wealth, that we don't really ever get to see any of this come to fruition, because it's
sad.
It's sad, but
it's sad.
But it's necessary, right? Because it takes a while to get to where we want to get to, but it's got to start with somebody that has vision and has a dream and has an understanding of like what's important.
Right. 100%. Now, what do you think about, and by the way, by having those family values and parents in the home, I think too, it diminishes the crime in an area, because people will have values. They're like, I'm not going to go commit this. Right. But not to get into that topic necessarily, but I wanted to ask you, because I have my own thoughts. What do you think about people that don't ever have kids, or maybe they don't ever get married? But what if they're that family man? They have that, I think he was older in his point of view. You guys should go watch the movie if you haven't. But let's just say, and the movie ended another way. Let's just say he's like, I don't remember how old he was. Let's just give the number 55.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, it's past my time, even though it technically isn't. But let's just say he's like, well, I'm not going to get married. I'm not going to have kids.
Yeah.
What should someone like that do when they get that far deep into their life, or they decide to go down that route? They don't have a legacy to build out.
Yeah.
What would you say is that person should do at that point? Because I can tell you what I think.
Yeah.
What I think is important, if you're going to take that route in life, and you already committed and you're still young, or you're at that age, what you should have done or should do is form, I think this is where family values is still important. You may not have your own family, but you could always form relationships with friends, like deep ties, whether you're like your buddies or your whatever. And they almost become like your brother. That brother, to some degree, has a child, and then you mentor that kid. That's what I see.
I think that's probably the next best option.
Right.
You know, I think.
Or adopt.
Yeah, or adopt. You know, I think legacy for me is incredibly important. I feel like I carry my grandfather's legacy. You know, and I feel that it's my responsibility to leave a legacy for my son, to not necessarily follow to a T, but, you know, have it as some sort of guide at least, you know? And I think listen, my opinion, I love that my son, you know, and I think it's the best thing that's ever happened to me.
How old is he again? He's a teenager.
16,
okay.
You know, and he's a young
Still
man.
young,
and
dude.
I mean, like this morning, there's this whole, you know, conversation about the banking collapse.
Oh yeah,
SVB. And one of my banks is First Republic, which is very much in the headlines right now. And so we're leaving to school this morning, and I'm like, you know, we may have to pull out our money, you know, but we're having this conversation about
teaching them now.
Teaching them like what's going on in the world. Like, this is happening. You need to understand these things, and you need to protect yourself, but you need to understand also like what's going on. But it's very new to me because nobody had those conversations with me, right? Like I've learned growing up. It's just, I don't know if it's a cultural thing where we don't talk about money, or maybe we didn't have it, so that's why we didn't talk about it, or we didn't have a lot of it, you know. But I think it's so important now. I see the importance of financial education at a younger age,
100%.
you know, because it's they're not getting it in school, you know. So it's parents got to be parents.
Yeah, I have a somewhat of a story like that too. I remember, I regret it. That was like a failure on my end because my dad tried helping me, but he wasn't he couldn't like explain it well enough. What was going on? Like there was a point Christmas he set up a stock brokerage account for me. I don't remember how old I was. I must have been, I don't know. I was a teenager. Maybe I was 16. Maybe I was younger. Maybe I was like 13. I don't know. Under like parent supervision of some sort. And he told me like, here's an account. I put in $100. You should start doing it and like reading. I'm like, yeah, Dad, I'll do it. I never did it because I was focused on baseball. I had a lot going on. Baseball, school, electric guitar, and saxophone was what I was playing.
Busy kid.
Busy ass kid. But if I would have known how important that was, because my dad told me, you start stock trading now, this is going to accumulate to a ton of money. Compound interest. But that was at the end of the conversation. I had never even opened up that account.
Wow.
Like, I mean, I opened it, or he opened it, but I never went back in to check.
And
then it got lost. But when the financial crisis happened, he explained to me, this is what happens when someone's like financially illiterate. And then that kind of took me on the path of philosophy, and then college, and then real estate, and things like that. So I think that groundwork that you're showing your son right now is good. And I'd like to see like what kind of like advice or what type of layout someone can provide, like that tweet, if you can bring that up, if you recall the.
So the one that, you know, I love, he talks about let me pull it up here.
Because we're gonna have it, we have it up already on camera.
This account on Twitter, it's called the 500-Year Family, and he talks about generational wealth, and he talks about family wealth, and he talks about how it's passed on, not only through generation, but how you hold on to it as well. Because as you spoke, you know, you mentioned that typically after the third generation, like it gets lost, right? And it's important to understand and reflect, like, why does that happen? And many times it's because, in a weird way, you have to run your family almost like a business with vision and a mission statement and structure, you know, and processes as to, you know, like, how are we going to raise these kids? Where are we going to educate them? What are we going to teach them? What are we going to expose them to? What are we going to expect from them? You know, and I think that gets lost, you know. And so for me, it's been eye-opening learning of,
should be a blueprint.
Of how I can build my own family. I feel like I have a leg up because, I can reflect on where my family is right now and the little bit that we've done blindly. But now that I'm just a lot more aware and conscious and
Put it
educated
down on paper.
exactly,
Yeah.
and now I can write the blueprint, and
Right.
now I can be that founder, and I can pass that on to my son and hopefully future children, and and there's going to be something that they can always. There's going to be a guide that
Right.
that will always be available to them, And so one of my favorite tweets, he talks about four keys to family wealth, and one of them being family meetings. And it's so interesting how, and I keep going back to who I am, right, and what I know and where I come from, and it's family meetings are not a thing, right? Like there isn't like
in the culture,
in the
in your
culture,
background,
in my
our
family,
background,
right?
basically.
It's never been like, hey, every Monday we're gonna check in with each other, right? It's who thinks about that? Like we've never thought about that unless it's like the only time the family is meeting is if somebody's dead or
Right.
somebody dies or there's a baby shower or
Which is still pretty good.
yeah, but
considering other cultures may not do that.
right.
But question: are you speaking on behalf of like your immediate family, or are you talking about the entire family right now? Because I'm thinking like, what about at the dinner table if you have that?
Yeah, I would say my entire family, right?
Like
because right now at the dinner table is just me and my kids, so we check in all the time.
But what about when you were a kid growing up?
No, that never happened.
Okay, I was fortunate to have those like dinners every day almost.
Yeah.
And we had, my dad would even say, like after dinner, he'd be like, okay, family meeting. Like he legit did that. And he would stand up and like start talking about whatever.
Yeah.
And which was kind of sad too, because like there were some family members that like on the exterior, like the big family,
Yeah.
they would know that my dad would do that and be like, what the hell is he doing?
Yeah.
Like, that's so lame.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird. But like it really isn't.
Right.
And then us being kids, like idiots, we're like, I want to go play PlayStation. I want to go out and play with my friends or whatever. But I think that's a good point considering including the entire family too.
Yeah.
But also having a blueprint, because even though my dad was up there talking, it would have been helpful. And this is even more geeky, but this is what I'm probably going to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm legit going to find a way to write it down and structure like a company.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you have to have that because if not, it just sort of dissolves,
right?
Or you forget, and you start forgetting a little bit each time, and then it just becomes nothing eventually, or something completely different. You have forgotten like the goal, right?
Right.
And but it's interesting that you've done it because I didn't do that. I didn't do that growing up, and now I see how much that was needed just to check in. Like it doesn't have to be like this big meeting of of current events, but certainly checking in to see how the family's doing, and I think there's so much more value in doing it together, right? Because I can do this one-on-one thing with everybody, right? But I don't know. I think there's something about the unity of doing it together that's just much more powerful because you feel that support and everybody's being heard and everybody knows 100%. What's going on. I think that when there's like side conversations or there's gossip, or there's infighting, and
that happens in families, man, especially Latinos
too. Pride and ego. It's like, we've all experienced not talking to our siblings or cousins, or parents, over the smallest things, which is so crazy, right? But
if you see the drama in like the Housewives of whatever, New Jersey or New York, Miami, it's like that too. People kind of like love that drama and get caught up in it, but it's not healthy.
No.
Maybe to watch on TV, it's cool, but not in your family.
No, it's stressful. And it's sad when you have holidays or you have birthdays and there's always one person missing, I think what a lot of the reading on a lot of these, we'll call them successful families, families that have had success in passing on businesses and wealth, for example, it's very well known that the Kennedys had like their compound, and that was that in a way that's like a family meeting, right? Like they would go out for a week, and spend time, all of them together in this home. The Bushes have the ranch, like these family has these places that they go to, to check in with themselves and to just spend time together, and
I'm sure Slim too, the Carlos Slim, the Mexican billionaire.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure he does it. 100% he does it too.
Yeah,
actually, yeah.
The Rockefellers, these big families, they do it on a much grander scale. We can all sit in the living room, but I mean, I like to go to a nice summer house, on the beach.
Right, and that's where we can get if we keep it up.
Yeah, and you don't have to own a compound. You don't have to, or a ranch, but you can rent a place, and everybody pitches in, and you come out for a week, and you just check in with each other and tell each other that you're still around. I think that's powerful.
You know who does that? Have you heard of Patrick Bet-David?
Yeah.
So he says he takes on the responsibility of covering all the costs.
Yeah.
Because he knows certain family members don't have the money.
Right.
I'm sure they have a way to work it out where some definitely pitch in. I would imagine 100%.
Yeah.
But he says it's very important that he does these gatherings multiple times per year to include not just his immediate, but his large family.
Yeah.
And I know my parents did that too. We always would have a barbecue like every, not just for fun, but just to keep the formation going of the exterior family. And he would do these, my mom and him would do these barbecues, and it was fun, dude.
Yeah.
But the drama that sometimes came, the Latino culture, and just every family in general, there was always drama brewing. But I think what I've recognized, and maybe what I'll apply to mine, but here's where they could be an issue too. I'm going to try and structure those meetings more. I know Patrick Bet-David does, but there's probably going to be people that are not going to like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's where you kind of just kick them out if that's the case.
Yeah.
If that's the case.
And sometimes they think it's a waste of time, or, but when they see 90% of the family there, then there's a feeling of missing out. Right. Then they want to be a part of it.
Right.
But I think that it's, I think because we are the one with now this knowledge that it's now a responsibility, right? Because you don't know what you don't know, but now you know, and you understand some strategic, right? The importance of doing something like
100%,
that,
yeah.
Because there's going to be a beautiful outcome, when you do that. But it certainly takes, effort, and it takes leadership,
right?
To execute, something like that.
And that's why I think it's important too to recognize, as you do and I do on our daily basis with clients, like different personalities. Some people are not going to want to be the leader.
Yeah.
Some people are going to want to cruise, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as they're somewhat of a support system.
Right.
But no, I find that important. Well, it's funny, as you were talking, I was thinking, like, in the future, maybe not now, your son, 16, maybe in 10 years, he'll see this on YouTube and hearing his dad talk about all this, which is good because this can help him.
Yeah, this is a cool thought. I never thought about that. Yeah,
I think of that, like when we do like record ourselves talking, hopefully we both live a long life, but like if it ever gets cut short, they can just revert back to the video.
Yeah, and we're writing out the blueprint for them.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's a cool thought. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, man. It's definitely an interesting thing. I think that's why I kind of got into podcasting too.
Yeah.
In a way, it's also making me think more, to put it into words and formulate my thoughts. Because what I'm talking to you about right now, I don't talk to anybody about family values or being a father, really. Besides maybe my dad every now and then.
Yeah.
Well, a little bit, and my mom too. But a peer, I don't talk about this because it's not popular. It's not cool. Like, who wants to talk about this? Unless you're a parent, maybe. But I'm not a parent. But you are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think I was talking to a friend earlier when I was on my way here, and I said I connect with you very well, and it made it in the same sense of like as a peer,
right?
Age group, culturally, background, it's nice to have somebody that you can talk about it with, because it can't always be UFC and
right. Even though it's fun,
and
I mean, I love that
models.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah. There's got to be some substance to life
100%.
as well. But yeah, back to the point of family meetings, I think that's a great place to start.
Right.
And I think that when you do something like in the past, we've gone to like Big Bear, you know, we rent a cabin
that's
and
cool.
we're out there for like, you know, a few days and just doing something like that, even once a year, where it becomes in itself a tradition. Like, hey, remember, like for the past, you know, 5 years we've been going to Big Bear, like we got to do it this year so we don't break that tradition. Sometimes these traditions are created on their own,
right?
You know, nobody thinks like
it just formulates on its own,
right?
Yeah,
right,
that's really cool.
Yeah, and you hold
like
on to that, because I know my son and my brother and my sister, like, you know, they think about that time we went to Big Bear and we went out on the lake, we rented a boat, you know, like, and we had like this great time, you know, took the dogs, you know.
So you're already setting it up like kind of how the Kennedy father did.
I think so.
In a way.
Well,
but taking out the controversy and the mistakes he obviously made with some of his kids 100%, but that's where we learn from others.
Yeah. When I said I think so, is I meant it in the sense of, I feel like I've always wanted it, so I was sort of doing it, but again, now just being just aware and conscious of it, like I think like, okay, now I know where to go with this. Now there's direction,
right?
You know, but certainly I think what Joe Kennedy did, you know, with his sons is just, I mean, it's incredible. Dude, because and you just realize like the size of that family, legacy of that family, and now they're in all sectors of all businesses, you know, finance and philanthropy and, you know, politics, obviously, you know, and there's one thing that I've read in reading about these families and studying these families is that they put contribution over consumption.
Oh, okay.
That's taught.
That's a value.
That's a value, and that was taught to the kids. So you look at a lot of these cousins and families that came from this man, right? And then because you can have wealth, you know, but I think that when you operate from a place of contribution, then that wealth remains a longer amount of time, right? Where it's just consumption, where it's like you see it all the time, like new money. You see people who had fast money, you know, and it's like the Lambos and the Gucci
like
belts.
The Bitcoin, dude, blew up. Everybody was spending, and then it's gone.
Yeah, you know, they thought they were hot shit. You know, a lot of these Bitcoin bros. You know what I mean? And now they're not. You know, but because they were coming from a place of consumption, right? You know, rather than contribution.
100%. And not only is what Joe Kennedy did, but in terms of what you're saying, contribution over consumption, which is excellent. But he also opened up all his children, for the most part, I think, to debate at the table and like formulate their ideas and not become a sheep, right? Critical thinking skills and things like that's what we're doing here today. Because we're thinking out loud in some cases with our opinion. Like I'm sure later maybe we'll have different ideas, but that's how you get the conversation going.
You know, what's interesting is that reading about Joe Kennedy and understanding his story and how his father came over from Ireland, you know, and him growing up in Boston and being an Irish Catholic, which, you know, at that time was very much frowned upon. They were, you know, the outskirts, you know, they weren't really accepted, you know, during that time. And so I think that having those conversations with his children were necessary to just help them survive and move, you know, through the world that existed back then, you know, and I think that you and I do similar things, you know, when coming from, you know, immigrants,
right?
You know, I think it's important conversations to have, you know, but it's
and we saw that because he instilled a lot in all his kids, but John F. Kennedy, when Joe Kennedy, right, the dad, he took his son to the UK because he was an ambassador,
right?
And then I don't recall the exact details. I'll have to retouch on it. It's been like 10 years maybe, but John F. Kennedy wrote a book about the war in Germany, and his opinion about it was not very, or the war that was about to happen, I think. His opinion on it was not very popular at the time, but he still went against the grain. and
Yeah.
he was comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Kind of probably how his dad set the tone.
Yeah.
Like, hey, look, we're frowned upon. People are going to hate us,
Yeah.
but just keep at it and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think having that support, I mean, in the end, they're all coming from the same family. And so going against the grain or going with what you think is just right,
Yeah.
you know, but having that support of the family, I think at the end of the day, no matter what happens, blood is blood, you know, and I think that you know, I think that there's just no tighter bond. You know, not all families get along, not all family members, but I think, you know, when shit hits the fan and there's an apocalypse, you immediately run to your family.
100%.
You know?
And speaking like a apocalypse or a catastrophe, I also see it like this too. Besides my immediate family and my extended family, I also like forming relationships with people like you, friends, that we can rely on. Where I know if shit hits the fan, and there's a bunch of cowards out there, I know that you're not going to cower out. Like we have that. I can tell that if something happens, we have each other's back, especially from the same location.
Totally.
You know what I'm saying?
But it's interesting, these families, you know, that have gone through, you know, generations, you know, intact, they have what they call family alliances, you know. So if you look at things on a grand scale, you know, especially in politics, you know, a lot of these families, the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, or even in nowadays, you know, the Clintons and the Bushes, like all their kids, like they all grew up together, you know, because
you know they're on different sides.
Exactly, but there's alliances that are created, you know, with families that end up growing together. And how many times have you heard the story of like, oh, I want my son to marry so-and-so's, you know, daughter from XYZ family, right? And it's like because they're creating alliances, which is actually something that's been happening forever. Forever in every culture, right? You hear about people wanting to combine like names, you know, wanting to combine families, or at the very least keep them close.
Like Romeo and Juliet too. I mean, that was a fictional story, but they had different families and they wanted this side of the family, or at least all these families, to belong on this side versus going to the other side, because they were on alliance versus the other one. Right. That's more conflict, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, because
alliances, that's cool, dude.
When shit hits the fan, and you need to pull out your guns and go to war, you know, 100%. You want to be aligned with 100%. Other families that share your values. You know, because it's very tribal, you know, but we're human.
We are tribal,
you know? And but it's also very strategic.
As I'm getting older, I'm really selecting my friends.
Oh,
now.
Totally.
Especially because obviously I'm a man, so I want to choose someone else that's like similar. They might have some may have way higher IQ than I might, but we have the same values, and they come from a different industry. But like, if something goes down, dude, we're like brothers in arms.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
So those
it's like adding reinforcement to what you've already created within your own family.
Right.
Aligning yourself with families that, you know, have similar ideals.
Right.
You know, I think that's super important.
Oh, it's very true. Yeah.
Huge. There was another part to that.
Oh yeah, there was like 4 things, right?
Yeah. So the other one was focus on quality. You know, and I think that's also, I think what that means to me, I think focusing on quality is 2 things. One, the quality of education and experience, which in itself is an education as well. That through that medium, that provides to you a quality of life. You know, I think that's you achieve a high quality of life or better quality of life when the quality of your experiences in your education are you know, of high, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for,
like integrity or just
quality of like education, you know, that if you go to, you know, good schools, or you're interning at you know, great companies where there's a culture and there's
finding reputable
like
schools and companies to plop your legacy, young legacy people to kind of grow with those values also. Is that what you mean?
Well, I think that it's the quality of your development, right? I think that education and the experiences tie into the type of person that you eventually develop into. So I think giving your children or your siblings, quality education, quality experiences is going to over time lead into a quality family.
I understand.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
And I think that
don't half-ass it
right
to get there, or you're not gonna have the end result.
Right.
The one that you want. Anyways,
I think about a lot of kids that I grew up with who had parents that would take them to Europe.
That's cool. Yeah.
And that in itself opened my friends up to like this different perspective of life and the world, and made them open-minded to other cultures, where I think what happens, you meet people who are, call them racist or call them just closed-minded, it comes from a lack of experience or a lack of quality experience or exposure, because you see going to Europe, and whether it's Italy or France or Spain or England, but there's just this different appreciation
of what you have
to I think the experience of travel.
No, because some people are like locked in their area and they don't go out of it, and they're oblivious to what's going on.
And I can think of a couple friends right now who I know did that as children, and they're great human beings. They're sympathetic. They have a bigger world view, and they do very well, and I don't think that's by mistake, right? I think that there's a correlation between that, between that sort of quality of experiences as a kid, I have this, I have a trip planned with my kid, to go to New York. I love New York. New York was a dream for me growing up, but nobody took me as a kid. I took myself when I think I turned like 29 or 30. It was the first time I went to New York. And it was everything that I ever thought it was going to be and
gritty
more.
And alive,
but it's just so
alive.
Like the energy, and I've seen it in so many movies, and I know that feeling that New York gives me, and
gives me motivation.
And I saw it at 30, so now I think about like having my kid experience that at 16. Like what is that going to do to him?
Put freaking fire under him.
Exactly. He doesn't have to wait till 30, to get that feeling. And I think that
he's already ahead.
And I think that you different experiences are going to give you different motivations or different or expand your dreams or your perspective.
For sure.
I think that's important for quality.
100%.
Did you travel a lot when you were a kid?
I went to Mexico only. Just all parts of Mexico. So I did travel.
Which even that is an interesting perspective of life when you come back here.
100%. So I can name off a lot, but I went to different states in Mexico and areas, neighborhoods. So I went to like Sinaloa, Durango, Cabo San Lucas, Mazatlan, Tecate, Guadalajara, everywhere, dude. And I noticed there was different cultures there, different ways of speaking a little bit, different foods, which makes the country beautiful too. And then I also went to other states in the U.S. So I went to New Mexico, Arizona with my family, a lot of Texas, and I noticed the differences, and I got to appreciate that. The one who really traveled is my fiance, soon-to-be wife. By the time I release this, she's probably going to be my wife. But she traveled everywhere with her. Her parents took her all over Europe, all Latin America, Asia.
That's amazing.
And she has this great worldview of certain things too. Like I'm very sympathetic, but maybe in a way she's even a little bit more, considering her personality though, but also her experiences, and she's a journalist. That's amazing.
And I think that is what I'm trying to give my son
soon.
Sooner than later.
That's the way to do it, dude. I think I would probably do the exact same. Actually, I know I will if I have the opportunity.
It's interesting how like I've just never thought about that before. I've never seen it. I
Yeah.
didn't, you know, you say like, oh, I went to whatever, I went to Italy, whatever, but it's like there's so much depth to that experience.
Yes.
It's not just eating pasta. It's like seeing history.
100%. Yeah, because this country's so young.
Right.
Like you're in San Diego, it's young, but you go to Boston or New York.
Right.
Going back to that, you get to see like how things were formed in the country.
Right.
All the old buildings and landmarks and things like that. But no, I think that's very, very true.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was that other the other besides the meetings?
The third one was embracing the family brand.
Okay.
This was a good one.
So how's that work?
I think you have to create the brand first, right? And I think that you have to have a clear understanding of two things. I think it's one, there has to be an understanding of where you come from,
right,
and where you're going, right? It can be two completely different, two different things. But I think that understanding both of those allows you to create the brand, right? Because there's going to be a little bit of both, right? And I think that we talked about the Kennedys, and we talked about what you can clearly see what is the brand of that family, which is a contribution, right? Politics, they're in finance, they're in real estate, and there's a clear brand when you meet a Kennedy, right? Like, oh shit, you're a Kennedy, right? You know what that means, and I think that's great for the legacy, but I think that's also very important.
I think I know what you're getting at. To correct me if I'm wrong, but it also gives you that hunger to keep it going, that fire inside of you. Like, I have a brand, I gotta. You can instead of just hearing all of this and knowing what your family taught you, but you can actually look at something and almost touch it, being your name or whatever the brand may be.
There's an identity to it.
Identity.
There's an identity to it. And I think when you understand your identity, which can always evolve, right? But there's a core to it, right? And when you have, again, going back to the Kennedys, I'm certain that they understand at their core what it means to be a Kennedy. Right. I think that you have to write it down. I think you have to formulate it. I think you have to create it, and I think you have to say it. And I think that you have to have input from from different family members. Who are we? Who are we to the world? Right? Like what are we? What is our role here? As a family. And I think, as most things in life, that when you have clarity, then it's an easier road to travel down. Right. I think the process of figuring it out as you go, I think there's a lot of bumps in the road.
Because you're constantly challenging your thoughts or your opinions of what you're trying to create. And that's where I like the Socratic method, right? Where you're constantly asking questions to get to the meat of it and know what's going on, so you're not lost in translation getting there. So much.
Yeah. It's I have to do it. Like someone just has to start the conversation, but you have to have, it's almost like a boardroom meeting, right? Like if we got to sit down,
we're gonna be putting on suits, having little kids like, all right, everyone get on a suit. I don't care. It might be in this little room, it might be in a freaking mansion, but you put on your suit, just an idea, but maybe like have a nice dinner. Maybe that's the incentive. Everyone's gonna have this amazing dinner, and if you're old enough, you're gonna have all this alcohol that's high end. It could work.
It's very interesting. I've had, in my real estate career, there was a part where I was 30 years old. I had partnered up with somebody, and we created a very, very small boutique agency. He was a broker on record, and we created this company, and he was a brilliant person who has had a lot of entrepreneurial experience. So he understood the process to building a company, and I remember sitting, in a conference room with him and a couple of the people that was working for us or with us. And we wrote out our mission statement, right? And then your vision statement. And then we wrote down like the 5 things that are our core values, you know, and how do we identify with that, and how do we implement this into our business, you know? And I think you have to do the same thing with your
You
family.
visualized it, identified
I
it.
think you have to do the
I
same
agree.
thing,
I agree.
you know, because then it's real,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
because
you can't just go out there just winging it. I think that's what
Right.
everyone does, is winging it, and that's why it falls apart.
exactly.
And even with a blueprint that's visualized and identified, if they're the pillars aren't, you know, maintained, they're gonna fall apart after the
Right.
third generation.
Yeah. You know, this just a random thought that came to my head, and I don't know the time period this all happened, but do you remember there was, and I've seen it maybe in too many movies, but it's like the family had like a crest. You know, you've ever heard this? I don't know if it's like in Scotland and England, but
A
it was
movie,
like,
you said?
yeah, it might have been like
Or a book?
Braveheart. I don't know, but it's like I've heard of this where like these families, or Ireland, I think it's mostly like a European thing, where like these families that lived in castles or whatnot, like they all had like a family crest.
Oh, I understand.
know?
Yeah. Like knights do with their
Yeah.
own, like, I understand.
But the families had it.
Yeah,
So like
yeah.
when they would send a letter and they stamp it with the family
That's
crest, and you
cool,
know where the
dude.
family came from. And
Yeah.
if you think about that, that's their brand,
Right. It is a
right?
brand.
It's
Yeah.
a brand, and people know who's that coming from, and
Interesting.
you
Yeah.
know,
It's interesting knowing that we've known that, but we've never applied it or thought about applying it.
right?
There's a reason why I trademarked my logo, AV.
Uh-huh.
Considering though, if it expands further, you know, the A is going to be gone, but the
Yeah.
Vargas
Yeah.
for my last name is important.
Yeah.
And if I want to include my mom's name before she got married to my dad, it's Mendez. So I can always do like Vargas Mendez.
Yeah.
But then I also got to consider my future wife, her
Right.
last name.
Right.
So that's where it kind of gets a little tricky. So I wonder how that works. But
Yeah.
like whose name
Yeah.
is going to be the brand that carries on? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'll let you handle that one.
yeah.
I don't have much advice for that. But
well, it's just the brand.
Yeah,
like,
but
what name,
it's interesting.
who keeps the name?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because if done right, then you know it goes on for generations.
Right.
Just like the Kennedy name.
Right.
Just
100%.
like the Rockefeller name, the Vanderbilt names, you know, it's
Yeah, those are great names.
you know, the Bushes, you know, who are relatively a younger known family. I mean, they've been around since like the 80s, you know what I mean? But
Yeah. And you know, like some people hate the Bush family, some people hate the Clinton family. To each their own. But even though I'm not a fan of one of them or both of them
Yeah.
to some degree, I would really like to see them continue though.
Totally.
I would hate to see it all fall apart, even
Yeah.
though you may not have the same beliefs as them, but I
Yeah.
think it'd be nice to see them constantly carry on.
Yeah.
Because then now you can tell your son, like, hey, look, I'm not telling you to be like them, but look at their blueprint.
Right.
They're growing still.
Right.
Like, you need to do that so
Right.
yours can grow. And then also look back at the Vanderbilt
Yeah.
so you don't become them.
Yeah, and think about it, like you meet somebody on the street. There's almost, I don't want to call it a privilege that is given to these families, but many times because they're in Mexico, on Jesus Christ,
yeah,
if you got the right last name,
there's some
you get that reservation at that place, or you get
Yep.
access to this education without an interview, you know, because you have it. It's very
It's a big deal
interesting
in Mexico too.
because in Mexico it's very much still like what
family you come
what
from.
family do you come from?
I've seen that because in the little ciudades, right?
Yeah.
Or even the big cities, it really does matter what you just said. The family
Totally.
name is huge.
100%.
Yeah.
You go to Tijuana, your last name's Hank. You know what I mean? There's a lot of them, but like you
Right.
have that last name, like
Expand on that. I actually don't think I know
the
that.
Han-
I've heard
the-
of it.
The Hanks are it's a family in Mexico. The father, correct me if I'm wrong, but he came from Germany. So like the main dad came from Germany. He accumulated all of this wealth and power in Mexico. It was rumored, I understood this, that it was rumored like he was the guy who picked the president, but he couldn't be president because he was German. So then he ended up having his sons and set up his own
We could
sons.
do a podcast on that alone.
Probably.
Dude. That's cool.
Yeah. And set up his kids with, great, education and opportunities. And I think one's a financier, and the other one that is established in Tijuana owns Caliente Racetracks, owns the Cholos,
Okay.
rumored to me, I don't know if he's a billionaire legally or not legally, I don't know. but I think he ended up having like 20 kids.
Jesus.
But so like there's a lot of
okay, that's
a
why
lot
there's
of Hanks that are running
in
around.
Tijuana, you said,
But
right?
he was mayor of Tijuana as well. So
Oh,
like
he was.
yeah, so there's a lot of that name carries a lot of
Wait.
a lot of weight, a lot of political influence.
My last name's Hank. Give me that table that I want over there. Yeah, it comes with
happens.
it comes with those advantages, but it's not like they were handed it to them necessarily. Right. Maybe the children to some degree could argue that, but the guy that you're talking about from Germany,
yeah,
he ran that up.
Right, he was the Joe Kennedy, right, of that family. He did something. He did something right and established his kids, and right. And you know those sons then established their kids, and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that family will last generations.
I hope so too. Even though I don't know much about them, but I would imagine. But that's why I think it's important. Like since I've been young, I've been trying to, without knowing, I've been trying to emulate the Kennedys in a way. Like trying to carry myself in that way, so I can like have someone to work from. If that makes sense. Yeah. So I think it might be important for people to, maybe you don't agree with all their philosophies, but like as long as you can identify a family and you like the way they're doing things, maybe you should follow that route to some aspect. Component to it.
I think that's a great way of doing it.
I think if I was in Tijuana, I think I would follow the Hank maybe.
yeah.
To some degree.
There's a lot of families, you know.
Right.
But they exist, you know, and it's interesting that I don't know that we just don't think about it, or we just don't really acknowledge it. Right. You know, but certainly I feel that, you know, there's no disconnect between the fact that these families are, for the lack of a better word, ran like an enterprise, you know, and they've accumulated this sort of wealth. Right. There's a connection there. Right. That when you do it this way or in a similar way, this is how you set up generations. Right.
In order for that to work too, I think one of the most important aspects of being able to be successful is having a leader within there. Unfortunately, there's going to have to, not unfortunately, but some people may not like it, but there has to be a leader running the show. Yeah. But they got to be humble to not piss off everyone else and like not let their ego like, oh, I'm better than you, because you're not, you know. But like you got to identify like who can do this and this and still be happy doing this. Yeah. Like who's happy. Like it's funny because I have a cousin, and I won't name him, but he's doing great in his career. And I remember when we were kids, we were like playing with fake guns. Yeah. And I asked him, I think I was young. I wasn't a teenager. I was maybe 10 or 9. And I asked him like, hey, so, because we were watching a movie. I don't know if it was Chuck Norris or this big tall dude. I forgot his name, with the ponytail. Do you know what I'm talking about? Martial arts guy.
Steven Seagal.
Steven Seagal. It was one of those movies. And I was, and it showed leadership. Yeah. And I was like, hey, do you want to be a leader or do you want to follow the leader? Like when it comes to like the apocalypse, he's like, no, I want to be a follower. I'm like, you want to be a follower? He's like, yeah. He's like, I don't want that responsibility. He didn't use that word, obviously, because we're children. He's like, I don't want to deal with all that. I was like, okay. And he's like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to lead. What are you talking about? I was like, you should want to lead too. He's like, no, that's not for me. And I was like, there you go. It comes to your personality.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. I tell my son, we've talked about, you know, life after school and what you're going to do, you know, and what you want to work. And I said, there's 2 types of people in the world, and those are the ones that need to be told what to do, and there's the ones that, you know, tell you what to do.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong.
Because that's how the world works.
You need both. You just have to decide which one do you want to be. Yeah. Because.
And he told you?
Yeah, he says he wants to tell people what to do. Of course, but here's
there's that respect though. Yeah,
he comes from, you know, me who, you know, self-employed entrepreneur. His grandmother, self-employed entrepreneur.
Oh, so that mindset's there.
There's without him even knowing, without us even knowing about planting this seed of like being a leader and doing your own thing. Just the sheer example of me and not only his grandmother, but on his mother's side, they own a business as well. So everybody's self-employed. He is surrounded by entrepreneurs. Right. And that's so naturally, that's what he's going to grow up to think is perhaps not expected, but just normal. Like, yeah, I'm gonna grow up and I'm gonna have my business maybe, and I'm gonna do my own thing, or maybe I'll inherit these businesses and now I gotta, you know, run these companies. And I've told them that. I said, you can do whatever you want. I said, but there's two things you got to learn. You got to learn finance and you got to learn business, because one day you may inherit these and you can still do whatever you want. You can be a photographer for, whatever you want to do. You want to be an actor, but like there may come a time where you need to run these businesses or you need to sell them because they're yours.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah.
But I still think though, like, if you had another child at the same age, there's always that possibility where they don't want to be self-employed though. Totally. They may want to do something totally different, because in my family, like I have siblings, girls, sisters, and some of them don't want to run anything.
Yeah.
They want to do other things in their own way.
Yeah.
Even though they might have been molded to some degree to be more like what we do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just personality.
Yeah. It's interesting in the Hermes family, it was passed on through the family. And then correct me if I'm wrong, but the person that runs it isn't even part of the family. He's somebody that married one of the daughters. So it's an in-law. It's an in-law that was brought into the family, and now he runs it.
That's cool.
But certainly that wife, that daughter, that sister, plays a huge role in some capacity.
She probably
to that business.
I'm sure she noticed and took a step back, probably in the blueprint, the family blueprint. Like, this role isn't for me. I'm gonna take a step back. But my significant other has that. Yeah,
because he had the experience and skill set, to run the company.
That's
and
awesome, man.
So even though they're not at the helm of it, they're still contributing. And I think that's what this particular person, I wish he would do like a podcast or something, because like
what is it,
500 year family.
Wow.
Because not only his tweets, but he sends a blog. I'll forward it to you. He sent another one today. Every Monday he sends one, and I'm just like, my mind is blown.
Does he have a photo or
I don't know what he looks like. I don't know who he is, but it's
a great contribution to society.
I share it with like all of my boys, like a lot of people that I connect with. I'm like, you got to read this. Just read it. Like, it's going to open up your mind to something else, But he talks about how everybody contributes in one way or another.
Right.
Everybody contributes, because when everybody's contributing in some way, perhaps not in like company shares or anything, but in some ways, everybody has ownership, because this is a family enterprise that we're running, and not everybody can be the CEO, but there's a CMO and a CFO, and there's management, and there's, the family lawyer, the family, the family bank, it talks about that. That's as awesome. Well. It's all tied in.
Yeah.
It is all tied in.
Damn.
Yeah. I feel like I'm just like on this different, road, to building something of significance, and the last part of that specific tweet talks about having ultra long-term vision, and that's what I mentioned earlier. Like, we'll probably won't even see it.
Yeah, dude.
Which is very sad, but someone has to take that risk.
Right.
Like, this may not be for anything, but it may be.
Right.
It may be.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, it's almost kind of like these like musicians, right? That like that died at a young age and made all this great music. They never got to see it. They never got to see the success, the adoration, the movies that are made about them.
Yeah.
They just they did something that was bigger than them.
And that's that vision that keeps going.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, to end it there, man. That was
good.
That was good.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man. I appreciate you coming on. And,
I thank you for having me. I love talking to you.
Thank
you.
I
love having somebody that I can connect with and have a peer with, that I feel like we're in similar stages of life.
I agree.
I think it's important that
it's very rare, by the way. What you and I have on how we can go back and forth with ideas is I haven't met too many people like you, which is why I like having you on. And I want to have you on more often too.
Yeah.
Because what we talked about was like, it wasn't surface level, but we touched on a little bit everything, considering we don't have all the time in the world to be on here.
Right.
But there's a lot of details we can still maneuver through.
Totally.
Yeah.
And cover different topics.
Yeah.
I love it. I could do this all day. Well, not all day, but
I almost could. I just need a drink, maybe
cigars and scotch.
What my co-host Steven, we're supposed to be doing that at his house, an episode.
Yeah.
Every now and then we're gonna have cigar and scotch. So
let's do it.
I'll let you know when to come over.
I'm in.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
All right, man.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.